Now, in the last campaign, we saw Maga and all of their supporters talking about the national debt and how the national debt has increased under Joe Biden and how Trump's 2 years before COVID were just the best in the world. So let's talk about the national debt for about 4 or 5 minutes. We got to give it up to Bill Clinton, because from 1993 until 2001, he only raised the national debt to $1 trillion more than what it was when he took office. However, looking below, you can see that George W. Bush doubled the national debt in his 8 years. Yes, we had a $1.2-ish trillion war on terrorism that he did not put in the budget, so he just spent money on a war. Okay, but also he had to deal with the housing crisis that he caused by his policy of deregulation. Also, in his budgets, he believed in trickle-down economics, and so he gave tax breaks to the wealthy and not to regular Americans. In doing that, he increased the national debt $6 trillion more than when it was when he first took office. Now, I'm not going to give Bush all of Obama's problems, but what Obama did, he increased the national debt by $8 trillion in his 8 years. That's about $1 trillion, roughly $1 trillion a year. He had to deal with putting the war on the books. As you can tell by looking at this, in 2010, 11, and 12, he had to deal with the housing crisis and the banking crisis, which is why he spent a little over $1 trillion a year. But in his second term, it wasn't as bad, even though in 2014 and in 2016, it went over $1 trillion. I'm not excusing what Barack Obama did, because he did increase the national debt by $8 trillion in 8 years. And if you really want to get into the weeds of it, George W. Bush in his 8 years spent 105% over. Barack Obama only spent 69% over. So, okay, we can talk semantics and say Barack Obama spent less than George W. Bush, even though Barack Obama spent more than George W. Bush in percentages. Let's just keep going. Then you get Trump. In 4 years, this man spent $8 trillion. And in 2020, he spent $4 trillion. But we can tax that up to COVID, right? But also we can add on his tax bill, which he gave $2 trillion to the wealthiest people in this country. But just like people, when they talk about who's the GOAT in basketball, Michael Jordan or LeBron James, they never talk about the years from 84 to 92 before he won his first championship. They want to excuse those years and only focus on the 6 times he won. And then they don't want to talk about the time with the Wizards. They only want to focus on that. So when it comes to MAGA, they only want to talk about Trump's first 2 years, and they don't want to talk about the last 2. But when it all comes down to it, the man spent $8 trillion in 4 years, period. When Biden comes in, he spends $6 trillion in 4 years. Now let's do the same thing that we did for Trump. In Biden's first year and a half, I won't give him a whole 2 years, but in his first year and a half, he spent $4 trillion. I would only chalk up about a year and a half of that to him trying to fix COVID, because I think it took a year and a half for him to really get us out of COVID. And that was him sending out those checks to help supplement people's incomes. But also, I think a part of this was him trying to give subsidies to green initiatives. We drilled more in this country. We gave renewable energies more money and more tax breaks to try to get us off petroleum and drilling. So I think that's what that came from. I don't know. I didn't look into the numbers. But what I will tell you is he spent $2 trillion less than Trump. Had you have given him another 4 years, look at his last year. It went from 2.25 to 1.4. So I would only surmise in that trajectory, had he kept going, and if he was given another 4 years, and I understand the man has cancer right now, God bless him, but had we kept Biden in or put Kamala Harris in there, we don't know how far that could have gone down or stayed the same. We just don't know, and I'm not going to speculate. That was about 6 seconds. I just gave you a 6-second pause so you can read that 4 number and count the zeros. Probably can't do it in 6 seconds. I agree, because I probably couldn't do it either. But that's $4 trillion. That's Trump's big, beautiful bill that just passed the House. We already know that they want to add $4 trillion to the national debt. $4 trillion. I want you to take a look at the national debt clock and look at what the national debt is right now as compared to what they want it to be after this bill is passed in the Senate and signed by the president. They want to increase the national debt by $4 trillion on top of what it's already there. And they have convinced MAGA that if you give rich people more money, they're going to give you an increase in your income, which they have never done. When Reagan first started this trickle-down economics crap, they said it would trickle down to you, and it has never done it. They've convinced you that it's going to happen this time, and it won't. He's also convinced you that tariffs are going to be the way to get us out of debt, when we all know now that you are going to pay that extra cost at the local grocery store, not China. And they've also convinced MAGA that, hey, we're going to take from Social Security and Medicaid 800 million is, I'm not sure if it's million or billion. Either way it goes, it's going to be a lot of goddamn money. They're going to take money from Social Security and Medicaid to offset some of that $4 trillion. But still, they're going to increase the debt to $40 trillion. What do you think?